Your Pharmacy Career Podcast, proudly brought to you by Ravens Recruitment, Australia's pharmacy recruitment agency, spotlights the myriad of career paths available to pharmacists. Your host, Christy Lee Patterson, and her esteemed guests will be sharing invaluable career advice that you can implement at any stage of your career journey.
Welcome to another episode of Your Pharmacy Career Podcast. I'm your host, Christy Lee Patterson, and today we have a very special guest with us, Sarah Gray. Sarah has an impressive career that spans traditional pharmacy roles and significant leadership positions, including General Manager and Chief of Health Operations and Innovation, and has also had previous roles as General Manager of the Olive Wellness Institute. In today's episode, we'll be diving into Sarah's journey, exploring how she has integrated her passion for nutrition, technology, and innovative strategies into her work, and discussing her insights on the future of pharmacy and holistic health. We'll also hear some of her personal stories and get her advice for aspiring pharmacists looking to expand their roles. So without further ado, let's get started. Welcome to the show, Sarah.
Thank you, Christy Lee. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate you asking me, and thanks for the great...
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Cut and paste, I'll send it over for you. So I'll rip straight in, and I'd like to ask you, if you could share some of your journey from the traditional pharmacy role to, your current position at Healthy Life. I'm sure you could probably speak about it for a lot longer than a couple of minutes, but I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts on how you got to where you were.
Yeah, sure. And I'll give you the short version, but we can dive into any parts that you'd like to learn more about. Like most of us, I started off in, you can either choose two routes mainly, community or hospital, and I chose community pharmacy. I love that, and I still do love community pharmacy. I just love helping people. That's the reason why I think most people become a pharmacist. And it wasn't until I was actually myself personally started to experience some food intolerances, so I became a bit interested in nutrition and studied nutrition as a result of that. So I did a Master's of Nutrition with Deakin University. But even prior to that, I knew after spending probably a good maybe 5 or 6 years after my intern years, of course, in a pharmacy managing a store, I always felt there was something else that I wanted to do. So I really loved helping people and individuals, but what I wanted to do was help more people and a larger group of the population with more of a public health lens. So I'd already, before I studied my nutrition degree, I'd already moved out of that traditional pharmacy role full-time. I was still doing a lot of part-time work in a store, and then I moved into working for the Pharmaceutical Society of Australia, where I looked at education, and I looked after the National Intern Program, and I really started love or get a feel for how nice it was to help influence lots of other pharmacists. Then I transitioned over to the food industry, or sort of therapeutic good industry, while I studied nutrition. So I'll circle back to that. If I forget, please remind me, but that's one of the key things around career transition. That change, really adding something else to my pharmacy degree, really gave me some unique opportunities. Then I did my Master of Nutrition, and from there, really everything's fallen into place. I've done a couple of these career podcasts across different forums before, and I often say that I'm lucky, and the feedback I get is, well, maybe it's not luck, because in a way you create your own luck. Yes, you do have to sometimes be in the right place at the right time, but I've generally put myself out there and done different things so that when opportunities become available, people have usually had a chat with me or chat to people that know me, and then I've gotten jobs usually just through word of mouth. I haven't really done that traditional route of applying for a job throughout the last, I'd say, 15, 20 years of my career. So that's a bit of I'll give you a flavour for it. Maybe we can dive into parts that you think are more interesting, because I could go on about it all day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, that power of networking is really important. And I look back on my own career, and when I was early on, like just straight out of university, I probably didn't really appreciate how important it is. People would come and speak at university and say, oh, you need to network, you need to go to these events. And I kind of thought, oh no, if you work really hard and you're good at what you do, those opportunities people will, I guess, tap you on the shoulder, but that isn't actually reality. And so, I found that even with myself, putting yourself out there, which is really scary, but networking has definitely helped me in my career. So I think, would love to hear your thoughts on, what you did to kind of make those connections in the first place.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. And I think we're connected because you've reached out to me here. So it's an example of how that networking can deliver you different connections and you can learn more things about people. And definitely for me, that was probably one of the number one things, the networking. Like your network is your net worth, they usually say. So always met people. I always went to conferences. I did volunteer work at stands at NAPSA. I'd speak to students, to other pharmacists, to different professionals. And that was actually probably key to me getting the different steps that I got along the way, as well as having that differentiator as well. So when you've got a pharmacy degree, I think usually as pharmacists, we're really humble. Like I even went and did a store visit recently and met the pharmacist and she's told, I'm just the locum. And I said, you're not just the locum, you're the pharmacist here today. So we're such humble people by nature. We think it's just, we're just a pharmacist. But, we can talk about anything from gut health through to immune health, through to chronic disease, everything really. And that's quite a unique skill set to have. So you've already got that. I think sometimes adding something to it or specialising in one area makes you really even more special. And that together with my network has probably lent me to most of my opportunities in my career. So just studying that Masters of Nutrition and meeting people at conferences, I then got my first kind of job in more of the industry space, and I worked for Hydrolite for about 5 years. And I got that job because I was doing nutrition and I was a pharmacist and I met people. So those three things together really created a nice kind of well-rounded circle, if you like, to help me get that opportunity. And then from there, people just kind of get to know you. So, you yourself, Christy Lee, have got your own sort of niche that people know you for, and all other pharmacists that I know and have good connections with often have a niche. So if I need to talk to somebody about e-scripts or script exchange, I've got someone who's an expert in that, or professional services or whatever that might be. And people talk. It's a very small world, especially in the health industry in Australia. So when a role comes up where they need a nutritionist and a pharmacist, well, there's probably not thousands of us. There's probably down to 10 to 20 of us in Australia. So the opportunities are few and far between because those jobs don't come up very often. But when they do come up, you're one of 10 people that potentially could be up for that job versus the pool of all the other pharmacists or nutritionists going for those roles. So it is a bit of a double-edged sword in that if you do want to change roles, it can take time because there's not really stuff. People look at your CV and think, well, what are you? Are you a pharmacist? Are you a nutritionist? Do you do reg affairs? Do you do marketing? If you've done an MBA, like who actually are you? But at some point, that unique set of skills together is really well suited for one particular role. So for me, that's probably the few keys to success or how I've sort of garnered success throughout my career.
Yeah, I just want to touch on when you talked about when people say, who are you? And I've definitely felt that I actually spent a lot of money on a executive resume and career organization that helps create your resume and your LinkedIn profile. And they said that exact thing to me. They're like, I'm not really sure what you are. And I'm like, well, I don't know either. I'm just myself. But yeah, I think when you see a role that you think you could do, tailoring and picking out the aspects of your expertise and tailoring it to that, I think is quite unique. And I think sometimes it can be very time consuming when you do need to put your CV or resume together. You put all these things that aren't relevant to that role, but yeah, trying to really think, okay, what are some of the other things that you've done and tailoring it to that. I know that helped me a lot. And I'm not saying everyone needs to go and spend the money that I did, but I certainly found it just helpful, even just maybe just talking it out loud with maybe a friend or a colleague so that you can easily articulate who you are.
Yeah, definitely. And also in that piece, not undervaluing the kind of foundational skills you have as a pharmacist. So example, and a health professional generally, you have a really kind of critical analysis skill, if that makes sense. So you can look at things, you critically analyze things, you read information, you want to know where the evidence is. What type of evidence was that? We're very process-driven people. And I think you have to be like that because you have to have a process with everything that you do to make sure that you have that consistency and for patient safety ultimately. So what I've often found is that even though I'm not a quality assurance expert, I am becoming one. And even though I wasn't a regulatory affairs expert or an expert in warehouse processes or other things that aren't necessarily things that I've done, those skills as a pharmacist are really valuable. So even listing out what are the things you can do as a pharmacist that are really valuable, so you can critically analyse bits of research. So are you going for a medical writing job or a job with the government or with industry? Those skills are just, they're very few and far between that somebody can really analyse something and then pull out the key points. So what are those bits that you can do as a pharmacist inherently that you just probably undervalue every day of the week, that you can actually highlight on the CV, because people won't know that about you unless you actually tell them. And that's probably the most interesting thing that I found, just having that health professionals generally have a very critical mindset when they're looking at things, and you can give them things that aren't necessarily related to health, even outside of health. It might be analyse a paper on this business or analyse the digital health landscape. They apply that mindset, which I think is a truly undervalued skill that we have.
Absolutely. But it's such a valued skill for so many different avenues, or just in life in general. I find it quite useful. I'd like to touch on your career transition into the nutrition space. I think that is obviously something you're very passionate about. And when you shared earlier in the conversation that it stemmed from your own food intolerances, I think, when you've got that kind of personal connection to something, it can lead to maybe things that you didn't realize. So I'd love to hear, your journey on that and led you down that path to nutrition.
Yeah, certainly. So through my own experiences, obviously I had my intolerances and I visited a range of dietitians. And I guess I just got really curious about the treatment and the way that they were handling my case, but also sort of saw a bit of a gap in that the dietitian can help you with the food side of things and how to manage all of that, but then the doctor manages the medicines and the pharmacist tells you what supplements might support you. So really having the skill set of adding the nutrition has given me not only the foundations of understanding the Australian dietary guidelines, food standards, all of the foundations you need as a nutrition professional, but it's also given me that ability to understand what are the things that actually you can do that are integrative, and how can I look at sort of nutritional supplements in a different way than I was before. So when I first studied nutrition, a lot of people in my sort of pharmacy network were like, well, how's that going to work? Are you just going to forget you're a pharmacist now and go and be a nutritionist? And I'm like, no, I'm going to do the two together. And then as I started to do the two together, it just became really obvious to me, like food-drug interactions, food-nutrient interactions, depletions that drugs cause with nutrients. Like I very early on helped put together a chapter in the APF. I don't even know what number it was, but it was around food-drug interactions. Looking at people with bariatric surgery, those with intermittent fasting, and how drugs were impacted in the absorption. So that's a whole stream in itself, really, where nutrition and pharmacy really go well together. But then also doing shifts in a pharmacy when I was previously and had graduated as a nutritionist, customers coming in asking about weight loss shakes or asking about nutritional supplements, practitioner range supplements, having a bit more of an in-depth understanding of those, but then also understanding the pharmacy side of them around pharmacology and drug interactions. So really having that together is quite well-rounded. So it really actually came together better than what I thought. I thought I would probably go off and work in a private clinic and start my own nutrition practice. But then I realised that actually I had a lot of value to give in organisations around bringing those two things together. And then the other piece that kind of fell out of that was regulatory affairs. So I can look after things from food standards through to therapeutic goods or scheduled medicines across that whole gamut. And most people specialise in one little bit of that. So I've enjoyed being able to use my pharmacy skills on more of the scheduled side of things, and then nutrition around TGA and food. So those things together have really worked a lot better than what I thought they would. And my roles have always been centred around those kinds of things. But it doesn't have to be nutrition. So I often get asked this question, like, how did you do it? How did you add nutrition and make it work? Well, it kind of just happened as I delved into it more. I discovered these things. But, I had one young pharmacist reach out once who was really interested in exercise physiology and physiotherapy. And I encouraged them to go ahead and look into that, because think about the use of opioids or anti-inflammatories for pain, where physiotherapists are treating that. Having that in-depth understanding as a pharmacist it's invaluable. So I think you don't necessarily have to do another degree, but if there's something that interests you, you can really try and niche down on that space and you become more of a specialist without having the official accreditation in that area.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really good advice as well, that you don't have to go and do degrees in these things and get certifications. Some people do, and I know I'm one of those serial degree people that I say, oh, I'm never going to study again. And the next thing you know, I'm saying to my husband, oh, by the way, I've signed up for this. So
I've been put on I put myself on an imposed ban. I'm not doing any more courses. I did the AICD course this year, and it was actually probably harder than my MBA. So I'm not doing any more. But I think that just shows curiosity of mind. So although we might not do any more courses, or we may, you can still become interested in things. So obviously I have an interest in digital health and innovative ways of delivering health services to consumers. So I'm now trying to become an expert in that space and understanding all of that. And just spending time in there and actually applying those skills, you do become quite knowledgeable. So you don't have to always do a degree, but you can do that to formalise it. One thing that just came to mind, though, is the MBA is quite an interesting one, though, because that was something I did a bit later on. And my main reason for doing that was sometimes when you're a pharmacist or a health professional working in a bigger corporate or medium to big corporate organisation, you're seen as the pharmacist. So here's Chrissy Lee, here's Sarah, you're the pharmacist. So you can go in the corner and do the stuff the pharmacists do. You can look after dispensaries, professional services, you can write articles, you can do. But I actually wanted to be involved in the business side of stuff. I wanted to be setting up the strategy. I wanted to be doing the governance. I wanted to do the corporate affairs. I wanted all of that stuff. But it was really hard to get into any of those positions because people sort of thought, well, you're a pharmacist. What would you really know about business? That's kind of the reaction I got when I sort of floated it with different people. So doing the MBA, although, yes, I now have a skill set in finance and all those other areas of business, and I have learned an incredible amount, I'm not that different a person that I was before I did all of those things. It's just now on my CV, people say, well, she's done an executive MBA, therefore she knows everything about business. Therefore, yeah, if she's applying for a commercial role as head of commercial industries or whatever, yeah, we're going to look at her CV because she's done the MBA. So the business one is probably the only one where I'd say that if you do really want to have a commercial mindset and you're having trouble breaking through, potentially that's one to consider because that's something that really helps people realise your potential, but then even yourself. So I left my MBA thinking I might even go and work in banking or a completely different industry because you can actually bring in those skills as a pharmacist outside into the business world. So it's probably the only one I'd say consider additional training if you really want to. But again, you could just read up and become more knowledgeable if it's something that's just an interest as well.
I've found the exact same in my career as well, which is why I decided to do the MBA as well. And there was some people that said to me, you don't need to. And I'm like, I know I don't need to. But yeah, you're right. When you're competing, maybe against people that have worked for the big four consulting companies or do have their MBAs. I know once I've got 3 subjects to go, so can't wait to actually finish this year. It's taking me forever. But even just saying I was an MBA candidate actually had a hell of a lot more weight. And especially for some of my roles in the not-for-profit space as well, sitting on boards, say want people that have that clinical knowledge, but then also the commercial sense as well. And so I know, in my experience, I've certainly came across those challenges as well. It might not have been the same for everyone. I know there's people that are in strategic roles and they haven't done it, but I definitely have found that for me, it has certainly helped.
You don't necessarily need it, but I think we're probably both in the same position that I would never take back that I did it. Because I think now, one of my friends once said, my colleagues once said, it's almost like it's wrapped around you, like you've got this clear silk scarf wrapped around you of that MBA. So you're applying that business lens to everything you're doing now, naturally without even thinking about it. So I do recommend that if you're looking into doing business things, but yes, to allow yourself a lot of time to get it done. It's quite intense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'd like to chat to you now about maybe innovation. And you mentioned your passion around digital health. And I'd like to chat to you now about digital health and innovation in that space. So you're working with Healthy Life now. You've got your wealth of knowledge around the nutrition space and your pharmacy expertise. But where do you see digital health and technology being a part of your career now? And I guess the need for that in pharmacy now as well.
Yeah. Of course. So for those who don't know, Healthy Life is a digital health and wellness platform. So we're actually a fully owned subsidiary of the Woolworths Group. So We do lots of things with health and wellness. We get out of bed every day. Just everyone is very passionate about health. And really, I didn't think 3 years ago or over 3 years ago when I took on this role, I probably didn't appreciate the importance of really understanding the digital health landscape and how much I really would start to become really knowledgeable about technology, about product development, about all those things in the technology land. It was a very steep learning curve, but now one that I think is really important that lots of people or people in health are really aware of. It's not just coming, like AI and health and digital health is not just coming, it's already here. So if we're not accepting it and acknowledging it, thinking it will just go away, it's not. It's going to get more and more important. So there's probably two things that I've seen and I've learnt around digital health and how I see it empowering us in the future. And one, I'll start with the health services one. It's probably more relevant for this audience particularly, but we know that there's a multitude of different telehealth providers, health service providers, and I think it's all going to flip around. So we think about the traditional model of health years ago when, we used to go and see our doctor physically all the time pretty much, and it was a one-directional kind of relationship is how I see it. So you go to your doctor, you get the service you get, you kind of accept it and you go home. You challenge it. You might ask a few questions, but you've got sort of a one-way relationship where your service level expectation is, I'm going to get the service that I get. It's completely flipped to the other side now. It's much more bi-directional. Consumers are saying, well, I want to treat my health, I want to take it in my own hands, and I want to speak to a doctor, but I also really want them to understand it's bi-directional. I expect this level of service. And so the standards of service are just going up and up and up for those doctors or those health professionals offering these services. And it's really good because consumers are empowered to question things, to ask more detail, to ask for medications they might have heard about. And I think that's really changed the dynamic. And I think for me, even though there are some limitations with what digital health services can do, the upside is just wonderful, like giving access to health services for people that can't access them in remote areas of Australia, offering it to a mum with 2 kids at home on a Saturday night and can't get out of the house and really needs care for her child. So it's certainly not there to replace the regular GP. 100%, you need a regular GP. You need that, continuity, chronic disease management. But there's a lot of times when you can't access your GP. We know we've got a shortage of GPs in Australia, even worldwide. So I think it's just going to become more and more important. And it's become now not just a sort of add-on, it's an adjunct. It's there. It's part of what everyone is doing. So I think for me, what I'd like to see is that kind of gelling a bit more, like with the traditional medical system and the way the government funds telehealth at the moment. It's a bit limited after COVID, but there still is some funding available. I think the two systems working together are really important. So how can we get the traditional sort of GP model working with some of these health services? Now, see, it's difficult, right, because there's so many new telehealth providers every day, a new one launches, and is the governance around those services as strong as it could be in all cases? Well, maybe not, and you could try them for yourself if you wanted to find out more, but that's the connection. So for me, that really has stemmed for me. If you remember back at the beginning, I was talking about you're a pharmacist, you can help one person at a time. You move into a role like I have now and have the privilege of having it at Healthy Life, you can now impact lots more people, a bigger customer base, and have a really positive impact at a public health level for a lot of people. So to me, you've got all these people doing their shopping. How can you actually connect those people to quality healthcare and incidental healthcare? So, I recently did a field trip to New Zealand. I think it was last year. It feels like it was recent, but it was last year. And they have a different model where they've got pharmacies inside the countdown, soon to be Woolworths supermarkets. They're inside. They're either a store-in-store or they're in an aisle. A health aisle kind of converts. And I've got mixed thoughts about both models, but I won't share my comments on those. But one thing that I found was fantastic, I spoke to one of the pharmacists who was in the in-aisle one. So imagine like the health food aisle converted to a little pharmacy. It's quite narrow. Privacy is probably questionable. I said to the gentleman, pharmacist, what do you like about this? What don't you like about it? And he only talked about what he liked. And he said the thing he likes is that you might have somebody, a 45-year-old man, walking past that aisle who's had a lesion on his hand for 6 months that he hasn't bothered going to a doctor about, but he's grabbing his bread and his cheese or whatever for the week. And he thinks, well, I'll just show the pharmacist because they're just standing right there. And then there you go, incidental healthcare, and that person is helped at that point where they are. So going to where the people are versus waiting for people to come to you. So to me, that's an area that is so much more to be done. Then on the other side of things, because of wearing my nutrition hat, again, digital health and innovation and all the things that could be done are incredible. So, we have a massive issue in this country and in the world with chronic disease related to nutrition. I think the stats show that if you eat one extra serve of vegetables a day, you can reduce your risk of chronic disease by around 14%. And that's a carrot or half a cup of frozen peas cooked. Like, it's not a big deal. But getting that message to consumers is just, it's hard. Like, year on year, we don't see change in that. I don't work with the supermarket team, but obviously, in the group, there is the supermarket business, which is, providing food for Australians. So what can we do there? So one of the things I'm really proud of is our Healthy Life Food Tracker, which we created, which says we know what you're buying and you're shopping. Let us now show you how that looks compared to the Australian Dietary Guidelines, your salt, sugar, fat. Could you buy less of some things, more of others? Can you crowd your diet out with healthy foods? And how can you swap to healthier products? And to me, that's really meaningful because customers can look at their basket and think, what can I do to make swaps for my family? And it's a free resource. It's a free tool that we offer. So there's so much that can be done. I think we're really just at the tip of the iceberg with what we're exploring at the moment. But the impact, at the moment we've got a campaign where you buy fruit and veg and you get bonus points for that. That's a big change from what a supermarket traditionally is doing with, specials on sort of discretionary foods. So I think with health at the moment, the opportunities with digital are endless. You can probably hear my two areas. So, of course, you could ask me any questions, but that's what I spend most of my time doing.
I definitely agree with you, especially in regards to when you're talking about going to New Zealand on that field trip. I went to New Zealand prior to COVID, and I was really excited to go and see these pharmacies that were in supermarkets. And I will be honest, I was very much against it, but I don't know if that was just because I didn't know any different or maybe other people giving their opinions and I was absorbing the people around me. But when I went over there and actually saw it, and started chatting to the pharmacists that were working there and hearing how they're changing that patient or consumer's life with that incidental healthcare, I was like, oh, wow, this is a huge opportunity. And you mentioned something about waiting for people to come to you. And this is the biggest, I don't even know how to say it, but it just blows my mind that pharmacy, we just set up a shop and just wait. Like in any other business, that you do not do that. Like, it's business 101. And so we, and I think we were very lucky that we had scripts. So they had to come to the pharmacy because of their script. And I think now there's so many different ways that people can get their scripts or access their medications. They're not always coming into that pharmacy now. And I think we need to acknowledge that and meet the consumer where they are. And something that I love to question people on is there's always that debate about are they a patient, are they a customer, are they a client, are they a consumer? And at the end of the day, no matter what we call them, they act and behave like a consumer. And I think taking that lens of how a consumer behaves is something that can be really powerful in pharmacy. And I think it's something that maybe the groups like Woolworths and Wesfarmers, they bring that lens. They really understand how a consumer behaves. And by applying that lens with pharmacy can be really powerful because we've got a aging population, but the millennial market is actually a larger proportion of people than the aging population. So preventative healthcare, that's your target audience there, right? And I think that's a huge opportunity for pharmacy to really tap into that demographic and provide those solutions for them. And I love what you mentioned about the food tracker. I have actually used that in my Woolworths app. And it was quite mind-blowing because I like to think that I'm someone that eats quite healthily. And then, one Woolworths order I did 1 week with my husband, we have 2 logins and we just pop in whatever we need and then submit the order once a week, which is very helpful because we're very time poor. And I thought, what's this new thing? I clicked on it. I'm like, oh, wow. Oh, that's really bad. And I was actually quite embarrassed. And so I did actually change it. And I think, there's simple things that Yeah, like maybe when someone first hears about, oh, there's this app about a food tracker, oh, like, is that really going to change behavior? But then seeing how it had an impact on myself. And I think, yeah, creating that lens of getting people to think a little bit differently about their choices in life and highlighting it in a visual that people can resonate with is really important.
Yeah, and it's about also empowering people. So I often say with the food tracker, it's about providing information. First iteration of our product, anyone who does product or tech will know that your product's never finished. It's always iterating. And our first version was very one-dimensional. Here's what you ate, your husband and yourself purchased. Sorry, not what you ate, what you purchased. Yeah, information's power, that's great. But then what do I do about that? So the builds we add on based on user experience and research and trends is to try and solve the consumer problem of trying to give them more information to make healthy change. So the second part was, well, now you know information. What can you do about it? Here's some swaps that you can make, and here's why you're making those swaps. The third part then is the gamification. So if you then reward people, they're even more likely to change their behaviour. So that's what we're doing. If you buy the vegetables, fresh, frozen, canned, whatever they are, you get bonus points. And we do see change. So if we track, we've got quite a unique opportunity to track. We've got 350,000 odd people using the tracker. So we can de-identify it, of course, track that data over time, and we'd love to do some research one day on it once we have enough of a cohort. But we do see that there's like an 88% increase in people actually making the healthy swap when we have a campaign on, or an increase in, I can't remember the exact stat right now, but increase in purchases of fruit and veg serves. So you can make a change in that respect. So I'm glad that you've used it. The idea is just to show you what you can create out. So I'm sorry it made you feel bad, because it's not intended to do that, but it's intended to show you that you can actually create out your diet with more of the healthy stuff and then less of the not so healthy stuff, which obviously forms discretionary foods are part of eating, it's part of life. You want some chocolate, you can have it, but how can you fill the rest of your day with really nutritious foods to make that the majority? I love your comment about pharmacy and the people coming to you and opening the door. Like, I remember being in pharmacy years ago, and you just put the A-frame out, which I think people still have one of the A-frames on the street, open up, and yes, everyone's going to come to me. But I think there's such an opportunity there. Like, as pharmacists, there's so many things that you can do for people. So I often go into some pharmacies and think, wow, this pharmacy is taking their opportunities. They're doing everything they can. They've got CPAP, they've got professional services, they've got, I won't mention pharmacies, but there's one local to me that I walk in and it blows my mind every time how amazing the service is in there. And I will drive a little bit further from my house to get to that store because I know the service is amazing. And then I'll go to other smaller stores and think, what are you standing for? And I think that a bit of a lens of standing for something in your store and actually offering people something different will bring more people through, and then integrating with those digital services. So having that digital front door, servicing people who want to get a script delivered. So there's so much that pharmacy can do, and I think will evolve over time. But I think moving from that older mindset to the newer mindset probably needs to happen a bit faster, because otherwise we're going to be overtaken by the likes of Amazon and AI and digital health, and we're going to lose that super unique opportunity we've got.
You don't have to change the world with these things. And if you are a pharmacist in a smaller independent pharmacy, there are things that you can do to target the people in your local area. So even using digital campaigns, like doing a targeted Facebook ad campaign with a link to a book now can be so much more powerful, and it's much more cost effective as well as a business owner to invest in these things rather than spending a lot of money on expensive print A-frames, as you say, at the front. Like, they do work, and sometimes you do need to do both, but thinking a little bit differently about, okay, how can I target the people that I can actually have an impact on, and thinking about it a little bit differently. Now, we're getting towards the end of our conversation, and I feel like I may need to have a follow-up conversation with you and delve into some other areas a little bit more, if you would be happy to join us again. But I'd like to give you the opportunity now to, maybe give us some parting words, or if there's anything that you really wanted to mention and, give those insights to our listeners. Happy to give you the opportunity to do that now.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. And thanks again for having me. I'm happy to come back if you've got the time as well. I think for me, it's just, I was actually at a dinner party recently, the last month, with a group of pharmacists, an intimate dinner party, probably 5 or 6 of us. And we're all kind of reflecting on the profession, where it's going, what we like about it, what we don't. And I made the kind of sort of rash comment, I'm not sure if I'd study pharmacy again. And one of my colleagues just was like, I can't believe you said that. Like, I love pharmacy and I tell everyone to do it. And I think my first thought about not studying it again, which was a quick thought and has now gone away, was more that I can see the frustration in the industry. I can see the interns, when I did the intern program, struggling to find placements, being put out the back doing, docet boxes. I've seen the frustrated young pharmacy students at the counter of stores, not really probably understanding the potential of their profession. So when I think about that comment, if I could take it back and go back to that dinner party, I'd probably change it and say, definitely consider pharmacy as a profession, because there is so much that you can do. You're a highly valued member of the community. The skills you've got are second to none, in my opinion, and you can go across so many different things, which is so unique, right, that we could talk about. I get asked to read articles about joint health through to magnesium supplements. We could do the full gamut. Probably my call to action to everyone would be, make sure you really properly fill every corner of that and use every corner of your skill set, and don't undervalue yourself. You're not just the locum, you're not just the pharmacist, you're the pharmacist there. You're making an incredible difference for every person that you serve every day. So how can you just even elevate yourself a little bit? Think about how you introduce yourself, what you do, about your profession, and then what else can you offer your customers or your clients or patients in whatever setting that you are to help them. And then if you're in industry, what can you be doing to advocate for pharmacists, and talking about why pharmacists are really good to employ across all different sectors. I mean, in my MBA, I did a week of work experience at one of the big 4 banks in the corporate affairs division. And after that, I left thinking pharmacists would kill it in this place. Like, they've got corporate banking and they've got customers like hospitals or big health organisations. Having a health professional like a pharmacist here would just add a string to their bow. So, and when I meet people in those settings, they think, oh, wow, I should consider pharmacists. So what can we all do as well to promote our profession at the same time, and not just think about it in an insular way? I still think, and hats off to the pharmacists that turn up every day in community pharmacy. It's a hell of a hard job. But I also reflect and think, I don't get that anymore, that satisfaction that I go home at night knowing I've helped those individuals. So to me, there's all areas of pharmacy that you can thrive in, but in every aspect, you can go to bed at night knowing that you're actually helping people with their health, which is a huge contribution to the world.
I think that is the best way to finish a podcast. That's amazing. But I totally agree. I think we're so lucky as pharmacists that our careers can be so varied. And if I think back to when I was a pharmacy student, and I was really excited to be a pharmacist because I'd worked in pharmacy prior to, and so changed degrees. And then I did become a little bit jaded in my intern year, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is not what I signed up for. But then, I surrounded myself and went to different conferences and events, and realized that, oh, well, hang on, I'm passionate about this particular thing. And then even within those smaller pharmacies that I was working in, you can make a little bit of a difference. And a lot of the time the owners might be excited that, oh, hey, you've got this idea, let's just try it. And there's no way I thought that I'd be where I am as a pharmacist. So yeah, I probably agree with you. And if someone had asked me would I have done pharmacy again, I probably would have said no, which is a bit scary. But now, yeah, absolutely, I would say yes, definitely do it, because it opens so many doors. And yeah, and I think that is really exciting. And if we can, like you said, go to bed feeling good that we've helped someone, I think that's why we got in pharmacy in the first place.
Yeah, I used to think I used to say I'm a pharmacist and nutritionist, but now when I really think about it, I'm a pharmacist at heart, and I've added the other things to it. That's always what I'll go back to. And I'm really proud to be a pharmacist as well too.
That's okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show, Sarah. If you would like to connect with Sarah, we will have her details on LinkedIn and also in our show notes. She's a very busy person, but I'm sure she'd be happy to connect with you. So thank you so much for listening, and we hope to see you next time.
You've been listening to Your Pharmacy Career podcast, brought to you by Ravens Recruitment. Don't miss our next episode, where we continue to explore the multifaceted world of pharmacy careers. Make sure to subscribe and share.